Hey, how's it going, everybody? So I just wanted to do this video in response to Gothix video in regards of should America ban porn? I'm already familiar with this type of subject, and I've already had my position. I've been doing some reading here and there, and I kind of want to give a little foresight into my own opinion on Gothix video. Clearly, I disagree with her opinion on her video on a lot of factors, actually. I'm going to put the link to her video in the description. Now, let's actually start with something that I think you and I can both agree on. Child pornography obviously needs to be banned. Like, obviously. I think that's something you and I can agree on. Now, with that being said, one is the biggest factor in that whole entire video. The entire video is off of the premise. Her premise of banning porn is purely off of the concept of morality and politics, which, if you're familiar with history, like people like Adolf Hitler or Stalin or Mao Zedong, their whole political structure and things and what made them do the things that they did was purely based off of morality and politics. Now, I am not saying Gothix is authoritarian, but what I am saying is she is carrying the waters of authoritarians. People can say things that benefit authoritarians and not be authoritarian. This is often why it goes back to that, what's that thing Charlemagne the God called it? It's called the Negro wake-up call, where you're often promoting things that you don't necessarily understand, and then once those inconclusions start to surface, and you realize that it puts you in a bad position, all of a sudden you realize how bad it is. I don't think people are calling you authoritarian because by nature you are purely evil. I think people are calling you authoritarian because you are covered in the slime and feces that the authoritarians have covered themselves in, and you have convinced yourself into thinking that the things that you are saying does not benefit them and it benefits us, which means you have fallen into the dialectic. But Yoshi, Gothix showed within the communist book for 45 Goals of Communism that one of the tools that they use is pornography. I understand that. But we've already passed that point because, first of all, you need to think of it like this. That was back in 1958. That was when that book was written. It is now 2025. We are long past that point. The plan has changed, and I can show you why the plan has changed. Because if you step outside your political bubble just for a sec, and you go to like someone like Rev Says Desu, where the anime community is constantly under attack, under accusations of pedophilia and degeneracy by not only the far left, but also the far right. We are past that point.
Hey, what's up guys? Rev here. It's true what they say, cloud chasing is a disease, and those affected by this disease will do anything, no matter how shameless, to get another fix of much needed attention. And if cloud is a drug, then Twitter is the dealer, because accounts on that site are rewarded for producing some of the most pandering and brain-dead takes imaginable. You'll have someone get a few thousand likes pretending lewd anime figures haven't existed for the past several decades, just for them to come back a week later to hit the clout well again, rehashing the same take, hoping to replicate the previous dopamine cycle with the sequel nobody asked for. Friendly reminder, they're literally 15. Who the F is making these figures? Well, first of all, friendly reminder that they're just pieces of plastic based on fictional characters, and if you consider these nude figures so problematic based on their age, then I have no idea why you would choose to repost screenshots of them for your thousands of followers on Twitter to complain about them. And since we're talking about friendly reminders, friendly reminder, your Twitter likes are public. Now I can't blame this account for thirsting after Ryoko. After all, she is peak tomboy, but when you want to act holier than thou when it comes to the ages of fictional characters, don't be surprised when your own standards are applied against yourself and your thirst for underage characters. Cloud chasing once again proves itself to be a brain-killing disease, ladies and gentlemen, but that's going to do it for this video. See you guys next time.
So then the question I have to ask you, Gothix, if you watch this video, is why are you echoing their sentiments? We have passed the point of degeneracy, and we have entered the space of now we need to fatten the government with power so that we can justify removing certain information that we can classify as pornography, such as Holocaust information. You even have people going out saying that the statue of David, which is Christian related, by the way, is somehow pornographic material. How? Rev and a lot of people within the anime community have documented so many people on Twitter, online in general, who share the same sentiments that you do. And oftentimes that they do share those sentiments, Gothix, when it comes to banning pornography, they're either A, on the sex offenders list, B, have admitted to sexually assaulting children or being sexually attracted to children, C, are projecting hard as hell, D, have said because you watch a certain content that they deem as pornographic or caters to pedophiles, that makes you a pedophile, but they're also watching something else similar to it as well. Or E, all the above. Because the definition of pornography or porn or obscenity differs from one person to another. Like your tolerance for obscenity may be different from my tolerance of obscenity and vice versa. So the question remains is who determines what is obscene and not too obscene? Is it fair for a government institution to say that Holocaust information is too obscene for people to understand World War II history? Just like how if you have the government go after two consenting adults, or let's just say, for instance, like a female makes a pornography, right? She has consented to the idea that this pornography can be viewed. Let's say some really raunchy stuff, some really hardcore hitting stuff. You kind of like, Black on Asian, those type of ones. Let's say, for instance, she's okay with the idea of people, masturbating, mostly men, masturbating to that content. Are you saying, despite the fact that two consenting adults said that it's perfectly fine for you to consume this content, you have the authority to come into our lives and say, well, based on my moral values, no, you are not allowed to do that? No, Gothix, you're wrong. Because isn't that the same logic that the woke have been using this entire time? That you said that you're against? That because of their moral values of being against racism, being against bigotry, that because of their moral standing and their moral high ground, they can enforce their morality through the government upon you? And yet you're turning around doing the same thing. I don't get it. But laws and legislations are always backed by morality. But it's also backed by statistical facts and data and empirical evidence, not purely moral grandstanding in politics. Because I don't give two shits and a solid fuck about those two. And statistically, you showed nothing. And then on top of that, you have a purely black and white vision on pornography as some tool of ultimate evil that only benefits the devil. It can benefit a lot of other people other than the devil, by the way. It's how it is weaponized that it truly benefits the devil. And banning all pornography, whether you like it or not, Gothix, whether you disagree or not, is a weaponization of the opposite extreme of what the communists was aiming for back then. And here's another one, Gothix. Again, I find it very fascinating that you so-called anti-woke people always seem to turn around and support woke without realizing that you're supporting woke. Because you can, in fact, do that. The ban on pornography by the communists in Czech led to a lack of sex education, high abortion rates. Hey, look at that. There's another way to actually lead to abortion other than what the left's doing. Stigmatization and humiliation, black market penalties, censorship of art and film. Lack of sex education, schools and media provided no formal sex education, leaving youth to learn about sex from literature and or fragmented sources, often leading to misinformation. High abortion rates with contraception difficult to obtain and sex education absent, abortion became a primary form of birth control. 115,000 abortions were performed in 1987 alone. Stigmatization and humiliation. Women seeking abortion had to appear before abortion committees until 1986, a degrading process despite near automatic approval. Black market penalties, possession or sale of sexual aids like vibrators were criminalized under illicit enterprise laws, leading to prosecutions. Then you have the censorship of art and film. While in 1960s Czech New Wave featured sexual openness, later censorship cut or altered love scenes, limiting cultural expression. Despite the ban, demand persisted through underground networks and foreign literature, showing the policy ineffectiveness of social costs. You see how if you actually leave the realm of morality and politics behind, and you actually substantiate your claims through either statistical data or, hey, by all means, use history. It seems there's a lot of holes in what you're trying to promote. As much as you guys always talk about how, people on the left are trying to promote socialism and it's failed time and time and time again, I find it very fascinating people like you are promoting prohibition, which has failed time and time and time again. Stop and think for a moment, Gothix. Now, again, I am not saying that you are authoritarian. I'm not saying you're fascist. I'm not saying you're evil. I'm not saying you're racist. But you are definitely carrying the waters on this one for authoritarians. So you got to be careful with it. I even asked AI what was the sexual assault rate when porn was banned in Czech. And it states, during the communist ban on pornography in Czech, between those years of 1948 to 1989, reliable data on sexual assault rates is not publicly available, as the regime did not transparently report such statistics. I wonder why. However, research shows that after the ban was lifted in 1989, the availability of pornography increased dramatically, and reported cases of rape and other sex crimes did not rise. In fact, child sex abuse rates declined significantly. A study published by Archives of Sexual Behavior, Diamond ETA 2010, found that sex crime rates in the Czech Republic did not increase after pornography was legalized, supporting the theory that access to sexual material may act as a substitute for real-world offenses. Banning porn increases sexual assault on women and children. When consent is no longer considered valid, which your tweet on Twitter is laced with anti-consent because you view pornography as anti-consent. When pornography, when manufactured and made, is consentful. Not all. There are some instances where, there are coercion, which is a form of not consent, which I would even classify that as rape. Porn reduces sexual assault on women and children. I do not care about your morality. I do not care about your politics. I do not care about the communists. As much as you say you don't really care about what white people are thinking, you sure are constantly thinking a lot about what white people think. For good reason. I'm not going to say it's wrong to actually be against those ideology, but just saying. Because somehow a stranger's body means because you do not know the body, therefore you have no consent to fap to the body. Despite the fact that the person in question, through having sex with the other person, in most cases have given consent for that video to be uploaded. And while, yes, I do agree that societies needs guardrails, giving the government more power is not a guardrail, Gothix, as you led with a truth and then you switched it with a lie. And that lie is that government banning porn is somehow going to make all your worries go away. No, it will not. For the people who are sexually assaulted at young ages when they were children, your problems are not going to go away because someone made the thing that you think go away. You're still going to have to face the fact that when you was young, you was sexually assaulted at a young age by a grown-ass adult who believed that it was perfectly fine for them to do that to you. That is still something you're going to have to face. That is still something people have to face, Gothix. Banning doesn't fix that. Now, please explain to me why banning porn addresses the mental trauma that a person has been sexually assaulted. Explain to me how that fixes that. Because Gothix clearly has a flawed logic. So let me get this straight. Because the communists weaponize pornography or sexuality in general, we have to get rid of all sexual content or anything of sexuality. Okay? By your logic, since the communists have infiltrated the church, we need to get rid of the Bible. Do you agree with that? Because I find it funny, like in her video, she's actually showing the steps. And then one screenshot, I'm going to show it right here. She has step 27, which shows that the communists have infiltrated the church, but she doesn't reveal what that is for some reason. And just to give that little context there, a full quote, it's step 27, infiltrate churches and replace faith with social religion. Discredit the Bible. I'll put a link to the 45 Goals of Communism in the description as well. And considering the fact that you fell into the dialectic, considering both the far left and the far right do support banning porn, you're not that smart. And that's fine. It's okay to admit that. And hell, anyone with like porn addiction, as much as I can say like I don't really trust psychiatrists or anything like that, you're gonna have to you have to sift through the bullshit and actually try to find people that are actually trying to help. If there's one person I can honestly recommend, it's Healthy, what's that guy's name? Healthy Gamer. Give me a second, cause I'm going to do a live stream. And yeah, it's HealthyGamerGG. He's a really good person. He actually has a couple of videos and studies talking about the positive effects of pornography and how there are people who are misrepresenting what this device can honestly do for people. I honestly recommend watching, which I will put 4 of those links within the description below. See, that's how you help people, Gothix. You don't recommend that we need to all give ourselves to the state while saying that you worship God. You can worship God and you can tell people how to fix themselves so that they can benefit themselves and not be taken advantage of. This goes to show you, no matter how much reading that you do, you're still going to fall into their plans because you're not thinking ahead. You're thinking in the times. Because this kind of goes back to that last video I did with like those idiots in that comment thread of that one right-wing video that I was talking about with Charlie Kirk. It kind of goes back to what I said earlier in that video, where just because you're aware doesn't mean you're the smartest person in the world. Just because you're aware of Yuri Bezmenov does not mean that you are of one of the gnosis, the one who knows all that knows what's going on within society. Being aware doesn't mean you're smart. Being aware just means you're aware. Understanding how you fell into that dialectic and knowing how to spot the dialectic so you don't fall into that bullshit time and time again makes you the smarter person. So I'm going to hit you guys with a little bit of a philosophical question right now at the end of this video. I'm going to show you this screenshot right here. And you tell me, because a child drew this, the state has the right to persecute them for possession of something they shouldn't have. Answer that fairly.
What are some techniques that you use for people who have porn addiction? Like, how do you help them get through that?
I think a lot of it is like understanding their emotions. So when I think about pornography addiction, so remember that any addiction brings pleasure and takes away pain. So if you can reduce the need to take away pain, then you're going to melt away the pornography addiction. So there are a couple of things that are correlated with pornography addiction. So if you look at multivariate regression analyses, there are two variables that correlate very highly with pornography addiction. One of them is meaninglessness in life. So generally speaking, if you can help someone have a reason not to watch pornography and jerk off in the middle of the day, then that will help them a lot. So what happens is, this is my population, but like, these are people who are oftentimes young men in their 20s, and they're like falling behind in some way. And it's like 4 p.m. on a Thursday, they're not really working. And like, what else do they have to do? So as we start building a life of meaning, like the need for pornography seems to decrease. That's one thing. The second thing is that oftentimes, remember, this is emotional regulation, and people will have a lot of stored emotions from things like traumatic experiences growing up, romantic relationships, all kinds of other stuff. So as we metabolize that storehouse of emotion, it becomes easier to manage emotions from day to day. They're kind of like built up, and your mind kind of stores them in the subconscious. So if we look at something like processing trauma, so I do a lot of like trauma processing for people with pornography addiction. And that sort of takes some of the gas out of the tank that's fueling the addiction. The third thing to do is to reduce emotions in the present. So teach them alternate coping mechanisms that they can use to manage emotions. And oftentimes it's like really life-oriented stuff. So if I'm living at home and my parents are toxic, like learning to set better boundaries is one of the best things to teach someone who struggles with pornography addiction. Because usually what's going on is these are people that have someone in their life who is sending them toxicity, but they feel so guilty at cutting them out. This can even be someone like a romantic partner or spouse. It can be a parent. And as they're like receiving the stress, it's almost like I'll joke with some of my patients that you have an emotional umbilical cord. They're connected to someone else, and another human is like transmitting negative emotions to them like a waste product. And then they have to turn to substances or pornography or whatever to like offload that emotional stuff. So boundary setting, emotional regulation techniques, processing trauma, and like really building purpose in life tends to be like a pretty good outcomes.